All right, jumping back in it now, you may have seen this. We talked about this a couple of times. Office Depot had some employees, one for sure, in Portage, Michigan, store 3382, Portage, Michigan. There was an order placed for some flyers for a memorial, for a vigil for Charlie Kirk. Paid for, everything was done. When they arrived at the store to pick them up, they were told, no, you can't have those. We're not printing those. That's propaganda. And this manager, this woman just sat right there and just said, no, you're not getting them. Well, she's been fired. She's one of scores of people across the country who've lost their jobs because, look, you can't just, and then they're screaming about freedom of speech. I've got a quote from Rolling Stone here for you in a minute, but we'll get to that. Joining me is Ronna McDaniel. She's the CEO of the Michigan Forward Network. Of course, she's been around in politics for a long time. Ronna, nice to have you back on the program.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me, Steve. Sad circumstances.
Yeah, terrible circumstances. Look, we're all still trying to figure our way forward. Look, I was live on the air when this all happened, when the report of the shooting came down, and then we had to report that Charlie didn't make it, which, obviously a devastating injury and not sustainable. But then the people that have been dancing on his grave. And here's, look, you've been in Republican politics for a very long time. You've been the focus of death threats. So have I. And then they sit there on the other side and say, oh, it's violence in America. 97% of political violence is far right to that. I'm like, that is such nonsense. And yet they continue to regurgitate these lies, Ronna, every single day. And here's just another example. Oh, that's propaganda. We can't have a picture of a man at his memorial vigil. We can't allow that. I mean, these people have lost their minds. Where am I wrong?
They've lost their mind. And in this incident, we had a young staffer from Michigan Forward who went in, and Steve, it was literally just a flyer, a tribute flyer for Charlie. It was celebrating his life. That's all it said. It said nothing about his political affiliation, nothing about Turning Point. And he was so respectful, this young man, but he was also mourning, very sad. A lot of our staff was, obviously devastated. Young kids around this country who followed Charlie, who followed him their whole lives. And so he went in very respectfully, said, can I talk to a manager? And they said, no, this is propaganda. That wouldn't have happened if it was a Democrat. It just wouldn't have. And so we rightly put it out. We put the receipt out. We put the flyer. So everybody had the whole story. Office Depot, thank goodness, responded, because it's unacceptable to lie to a customer and say, we won't print a flyer about somebody's passing to tribute them.
Yeah. You see, they're going wild. But this is different, Ronna. It is. And I think in a good way. And what I mean by that is that people are actually being held accountable in 2025. I don't think they would have been a year ago. I don't think they would have been 2 years ago.
I know this firsthand. I mean, when I was RNC chair, we were deplatformed. We were kicked off of credit card processing. We were kicked off of social media platforms. Many people were fired, kicked off of boards that they sat on just for being Republican. So that was the norm not so long ago, where you could lose your life and your livelihood for being a conservative. I am glad to see the pendulum swing a little, where finally Democrats are being held accountable for their lack of any type of willingness to work across the aisle, for what they're doing to conservatives, and they're actually losing their jobs for celebrating the death of a young man. And that is the right thing to have happen.
Yeah, and let me bring this back, is Charlie Kirk's words are taken out of context in a variety of places. But look, the fact of the matter is they've lost the debate. They've lost the argument. So I think it's even more dangerous today than it was Wednesday of last week. And I say that because of vigils like the one you held, or the memorial service or funeral, if you will, that's coming up next Sunday in Arizona. I'll be there along with my wife, because Charlie Kirk was a friend of ours. We knew him, not as well as some, but well enough to call him and number him among our friends for sure. But I think this is a dangerous time. They've lost the argument. They've lost the debate. And I believe these people are more dangerous and more willing to commit more violence now than before Wednesday. I think people should have their head on a swivel, be concerned, be focused, look around and see what's happening. Because if you're gathering a bunch of Charlie Kirk supporters in one place, or supporters of free speech, or conservative values, or Christian values, man, you're a big target, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it's a really scary time. You know, Steve, you were on the air, but I was about to get in the air. I was about to get on a flight, and I have two college age kids who were a wreck. You know, they met Charlie. They'd gone to Turning Point events with me.
Sure.
Um, it was really, really tough as a mom. And I didn't see the footage because I wasn't on social, but they
Don't
saw the
watch it.
footage immediately. There was no filter. So they knew instantly that it was probably fatal. Plus, my daughter went to Brigham Young. So she had many friends at UVU who were there in person, who were calling and texting. This is a moment they will remember for the rest of their lives. And what I'm worried about is it going to scare people out of the public eye? Is it going to make them afraid to speak up? We can't let that happen. We need to change, make sure that our kids feel safe and they understand the importance of free speech. That is what Charlie would have wanted. That's what all of us want. But we do have to recognize that safety, unfortunately, is an issue in this country.
Yes, it
And
is.
we've got to make sure that we tone it down a little. And we can't allow the left to call us Nazis and monsters and demonize us, all these names we've been called. You know, I've lived under many, many death threats
Yeah.
for many years. And it is frightening. And it's frightening for this next generation and what they saw last week. We've got to help them recover from that.
Yeah, I am not a Nazi. I am not a fascist. I'm not a
Me
white
neither.
supremacist. I'm not any of these things that they try to label you and I every single day. But let me give you a couple quick quotes. They bring a knife, we bring a gun. Barack Obama. I want you to argue with them and get in their face. Barack Obama. I don't want to quell anger. I think people are right to be angry. I'm angry. Barack Obama. Hit back twice as hard. Barack Obama. I could go on with this list, by the way. I think that's where it started. This idea that Donald Trump has divided America, nonsense. I mean, is he a polarizing political figure? Yes, but it did not start with him. We can do better, Ronna. We're going forward. 38,000 requests for new TPUSA chapters in this country. Charlie Kirk planted a lot of seeds around this country for freedom of speech, for Christianity, for the future of this nation. I'll give you the last word.
Well, and he also brought young kids who are being indoctrinated on college campuses by liberal ideology and said, I'm going to help you change the way you think. I'm going to give you a
Right.
different path. And that was critical. It was critical in the last election. And he took on the status quo, and that's brave and difficult. And of course, now we've seen the result of that. But his legacy will live on, and we obviously send our prayers to his wife Erica and his young children and the millions of people that he touched and these young kids.
You got it. Ronna McDaniel, always appreciate talking to you. Michigan Forward Network, if you want to find out more. Thank you, Ronna.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Always, always. The world is different today, but it can still be better. Don't lose hope of that. Don't lose sight of the joy. It's still possible. I'll be back.